that the development of this state will take off. So I encourage everybody to participate, to lean in, but also policymakers to make sure that we have the right conditions and that we take good plans and ideas into specific activities. On that note, I would like to thank you again for inviting and being part of this important summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thiem. This will do for goodwill messages for now. Would like to go to a documentary where we present to you a documentary on agriculture. Kaduna State is known for that. That's the chief business of the state. And so we'll have a documentary here to be presented. If we're ready with the documentary, please, on agriculture. Can we please, at the back there, just interrupt on the agri presentation and bring in Busara Center for Behavioral Economics. They have something for us this morning. Busara Center. If you're ready for us, please, and quickly too.
State is the only state that produces ginger commercially. And Nigeria's ginger is known to be one of the best in terms of quality globally. We are the #1 producers of dates in Nigeria.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the mix-up. Permit me to stand on existing protocols. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come up. I don't know if you can see me. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Hafsa Jumari. I'm an associate at the Busara Center for Behavioral Economics. So the reason why I'm up here today is to talk about a recent trend we've seen with, our clients within the Busara Center. Recently, I'm still waiting for the slides to come up. So more and more, we're starting to see a lot of agri-value chain actors come to us, with the issues of we have a good product, we have a good project, we have a good program, we have a good model, but farmers, stakeholders, value chain actors are not really cooperating with us. They're not taking up our model, they're not taking up our products. And one of the issues is that when people are considering investment scaling, they do not consider some factors. So what are the factors that people tend to consider when they think about investment scaling? So some of them include, the costs, the benefits, competitive landscape, who's in the market, how long will my investment last if I put in money, the legal, political landscape, weather and climate, how it impacts productivity. exchange rates and volatility, interest rates as well, for all the foreign investors, of course. Creditors, bank risk, logistics. But one thing that people never ever consider is, not that they never ever, but they hardly ever consider, is that your value chain actors and your farmers may not act rationally. So one thing you tend to find is that all these investment models that we have tend to focus on the fact that human beings will, think about their own benefits, think about the costs. But the truth is, human beings don't behave rationally. And we've seen a lot of ag value chains and even other value chains fail because you do not consider how farmers think or stakeholders think. So traditional economics has given us all these models, right, that says consider the costs, consider the benefits, consider the self-interest of the farmers. But that's not what we see in actuality in the field. So the traditional economics tells us that people think rationally, people understand all relevant information, which is often not true. You give a farmer all the information about fertilizer, how it's made, what is inside the fertilizer. The farmer may not necessarily, care about that information or even have the ability to process it. We assume that people have the ability to value the costs and benefits, of all their actions or choices, but that's actually not true, as we see in reality. We also assume people act in self-interest. You give a farmer a product, you give a farmer a cow, and you expect him to generate value from that cow. But the farmer may not be thinking about, how can I generate value? The farmer may be thinking, how do I keep this as an asset? How do I store value in this cow? Just in case my family runs out of money, I have something to sell. So the challenge is now we have all these models that are based on these false assumptions of the way human beings behave. And all these companies are rolling out these models and finding that they are reaching a sort of, blockade on the field because stakeholders and farmers are just not interacting with their models because they did not consider the way human beings actually think in the models. So we've seen it with a number of our clients in East Africa. In Ethiopia, for instance, there was an issue with, farmers not buying foreign chickens to sort of crossbreed with their own, local chickens. And this one company was trying to figure out what was going on. They just thought, okay, farmers did not have the information. They gave farmers the information, still didn't work out. And the key issue was that, they were using agronomists to go sell to farmers. And agronomists are not salespeople. They dump information on farmers, and farmers don't necessarily know how to interact with it. So after this company sort of engaged us to consider, behavioral science and the way their model was developed, we sort of pinpoint the key issues that were making this model suffer. And right now, they're running, millions of dollars in the ag value chain for chicken in Ethiopia. A lot of farmers have started buying this chicken. So we were able to pinpoint the key behavioral barriers. So I'm just telling everyone here, when you come to invest in Kaduna, think about these factors. We know that farmers are emotional. People are emotional in general. They're impulsive. They have intuition. For instance, you give farmers improved seeds, and you tell them, plant just one seed in the ground. And then you find that farmers will put a bunch of seeds together because they think intuitively, if I put all these seeds together, they have a better chance. But in reality, these seeds are competing for resource. Farmers have feelings, social preference. They'll do what other farmers do. Their self-esteem, how they view themselves relative to other people. These are all factors that we've seen that have impacted, models in the ag value chain. So again, farmers or people in general don't think with precision. So how you give them information is very relevant. people don't absorb large information, and that I look at a lot of training programs in Nigeria and it's just dump information. Nobody ever thinks about how people absorb information. People also don't remember that well. So learning in practice tends to be a lot better than just provision of information. Also, people can't compute probabilities. They'll say a drought is likely when it's not. They'll think a drought is unlikely when it's actually not. People use shortcuts in their minds to deal with issues. So just an overview of behavioral economics. The subfield of economics is actually the more newer economics that's being practiced these days. And it sort of takes current economic models and applies, little variations to those models based on how human beings actually behave. So the last few Nobel Prizes in economics has actually been around behavioral economics. In 2015, Barack Obama actually put out an executive order saying all federal agencies in the US have to use behavioral insights to implement policy, and they set up a behavioral insights team in the US. So people are starting to recognize how important this is. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people in the private sector have been using this on consumers for a long time. But the rest of the world is starting to catch up. So when you're thinking about how farmers think and how their thinking is predictable, you can actually categorize it and find interventions that actually pinpoint those behavioral barriers. So some of it is risk. We all know farmers tend to be risk averse. They don't take up technology, that's beneficial to them. Timing, time preference. People tend to, discount the future, focus on the present, and that impacts how people are thinking about investments. Updating information. People don't just soak in information. Social networks. Who are the influencers within farming communities? I think this is pretty important for cluster development models. Identity, complexity, these are just some of the issues. And these are some basic farmer biases. Again, risk aversion. I think that is the one that maybe almost everyone is familiar with. Inertia. So farmers tend to stick to, their current way of practice, even when they know something is beneficial. There's always, that decision inertia, where you changing from one thing to another. Social norms, what people again are doing around you. Some of you are familiar with the concept of demo plots. So what we do at Bisara is we figured out how to optimize who to select for demo plots and other things. Okay. So some examples, I'll just run through these quickly. Some of the things that people need to start thinking about. Some tips for you investors in the ag value chain is try and know who came before you in this space. What have they done? What has failed? Detail the farmer journey. What does a day in the life of the farmer look like? How is their consumption side interacting with their production side? So their family, how they interact with their household actually impacts what they do in the field. Validate all your assumptions. So you tend to get cases where people, assume that herdsmen are doing this for certain reasons. Maybe they feel entitled to the trade, but you never get data to back that. So try and validate your assumptions. Pre-test your assumptions. Pilots, again, I've found that a lot of times, like, Nigeria is like a country of 1 billion pilots. Some NGO will come up with a new product, a new model, a new program, test it out for 2 weeks, and it's done. But what happens is that those things actually influence how farmers would interact with other models going forward. So you need to research on those. And you as investors don't have, you don't have the leeway to just run pilots. So you need to start thinking about these things when you go forward. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope you enjoyed it.
Can I have more of that, please? This is a specialized presentation, and we must encourage our young ones, men and women who are into this very specialized presentation. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we'll just go into the presentation of the documentary on agriculture. It is ready now, please. Documentary on agriculture.
We are the number one producers of dates in Nigeria. We are the number one producers of tomatoes in Nigeria. We are the number one producers of sorghum in Nigeria today. We are number 2 in soil, just to name it. Nigeria, as I speak to you today, Kaduna State is also number 1 in the production of turmeric. All these are very high value products. Basically, what we are positioning ourselves for is to become the agribusiness hub of northern Nigeria. But first, what do we need to do? What we are looking at doing is to cause a paradigm shift from the approach, from the developmental approach to agriculture into creating an enterprise in agriculture.
The agricultural sector of Kaduna State is one that is very vast and welcoming at all times. Already, a number of local and foreign investors have seen this potential and have keyed into it. One of them is Mira.
Tomato Joss is a farming and processing company. Originally, we were in Nasarawa State. We moved to Kaduna in 2017. We grow tomatoes. We help right now over 250 smallholder farmers to grow tomatoes, and our intention is starting next year to process those into a local brand of tomato paste. Right now, we have 500 hectares, of which we have 35 hectares under management. Our intention is to expand to about 5,000 hectares over the next 2 years. Kadipa played a huge role in our coming to Kangimi. I looked at land in many locations, definitely over 10 or 12 LGAs and multiple locations within those LGAs. I looked at private lands, I looked at public lands, and every time I said this land is not the right place for us, Kadipa was ready to show us another area. In instances where we've tried to learn how to get the right permits for our warehouse, or tried to learn how to, create road access for our farm, Kadipa has always been there to answer our questions and to direct us to the right people at Kaduna State who can solve our problems.
GB Food is another investor in the Kaduna State agricultural space.
Here you have Gino Tomato Farm. Gino Tomato Farm has been built as a pilot farm and factory on a facility here that is about 100 hectares big. We're using about 30 hectares for farming, and this other area you can see behind me is about 5, 6, 7, 8 hectares for agriculture, for the factory, greenhouse, and warehouses. We have a farm where that has about 30 hectares. We planted tomatoes using a mechanized semi-automatic process with quite a fair number of people, and the tomatoes we harvest from that farm is being processed in the factory that you see behind me. You can actually hear it running.
The Kaduna State Commissioner for Agri and Forestry, Manzo Daniel, says the livestock industry of Kaduna State, when properly tapped, has the potentials of generating billions annually.
Livestock is very important. Like I said, we took a survey and a study of all the livestock sector, particularly the abattoirs and our slaughterhouses, and we found out that they were in such a deplorable state. But we also found that the livestock sector was worth over 26 billion annually, even though it was operating largely informally. And we also found out that meat from Nigeria is highly sought for in the global market because it is largely organic. But our players in that sector could not actually access the international market because of what? They were not competitive. And when I say competitive, I'm not only talking about prices, I'm talking about standards.